Okay, you're granted a one-time temporary extension February 15th. Okay. All
Hi
right.
guys, welcome. Welcome, welcome.
Hello, hello.
Thanks so much for joining us.
I'd say welcome in, but I sound like I'm welcoming everyone to a bakery or something. Grab some coffee, everyone. Hold on.
Nice to see everybody. We're going to wait just a minute or so, let everybody get in and get comfortable before we get started. Excited that you're here with us today. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's really happy to have you here for this discussion today. It's definitely one of our favorite topics, and a lot of these issues, questions, all that kind of stuff definitely come up on a day-to-day. So happy to have you here.
Yes, sir. Looks
We're
like
just
the
going to wait we're just going to wait a minute while people come in and get settled. I promise we'll get started here very shortly.
I always talk about having jazzy music here. I'll have to think about doing that for the next one
For
as
sure.
we're waiting. Get everybody ready to go. All right, Mike, you ready to get started?
Ready to rock. Let's do it.
Perfect. I will go ahead and get us started. Want to welcome everybody. We're so excited that you're here with us today to learn what it takes to get in, to increase our chances of getting into a highly selective university. A couple of housekeeping things at the very beginning. All of you are going to be on mute initially when you come in. This is a webinar, so we're not able to see your smiling faces. And I believe the chat is not active either. We do have a Q&A option. So if you have questions, as Mike is going through this webinar, if you could put your questions under Q&A, I will be taking a look at that and either answering questions on the fly or asking them live so they can be answered during the webinar. So next slide, please, Mike.
For sure.
Just to give you an idea of who is here in the room with you presenting to you today, we are College Inroads. We started as a sole proprietor back in 2009. Mike is our founder. He started us in 2009. He and I joined forces in 2011 and incorporated. Our home office is in Austin, Texas, but we do work the continent. We have clients in Canada, clients in Mexico. We actually have a client abroad overseas in London as well. So I guess we could change that. But we work with clients all over the US, all over Texas, all over Austin, kind of everywhere. Between Mike and I, we have almost 40 years experience combined in our industry. I don't know about you, Mike, but that makes me feel extremely old. We do have 30 team members on our team, and they include educational consultants, application specialists, essay specialists, financial aid specialists, learning differences specialists. So we do have a team that supports all of our clients. We have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. We've won lots of awards through our local chambers of commerce and through the University of Texas. We are presenters at some of our um, industry conferences and some financial national conferences as well. And we worked with thousands of college-bound students all over the United States. I am Anne Marie Hatfield. I'm one of the partners in College Inroads. I'm a proud graduate of the University of Texas, Austin, Hookham. I live in Lakeway outside of, in kind of the suburbs of Austin. I serve on a lot of boards. I do a lot of volunteering, and as I am meeting new people, a question I get asked all the time is how did College Inroads come to be? Mike, my business partner, who is going to be presenting this evening, Mike and I met at a different educational services company. Both of our parents were in public education for many, many, many years. At that educational services company, I love the idea of helping kids, but the guy that we worked for didn't have the same ethics and values that we did. And I was exhausted at the end of every day because we really weren't able to help families in the way that we really wanted to. I was in the wrong role at the wrong company, and there were only so many things that we could do to help families. So Mike and I decided to leave that company and incorporate college inroads so we could help families in our way. We came up with a process that helps kids figure out what to major in, where to apply, and how to pay less for college. We know how all of the pieces of the puzzle fit together. We had to spend some time working on this process, and our process really has changed and evolved over the years based on our clients' feedback. So now we have served over 1,300 kids, almost 1,400 at this point, just like yours helped them get into college. Our kids have gotten into schools in 49 of the 50 states. No one has applied to Alaska quite yet. Be interesting to see that one. Our kids have gotten into schools with a 100% acceptance rate, like Sul Ross, down to 3% acceptance rate, like MIT. We've learned all of the things so you don't have to, and we've done all of the hard work. And the end result is that we now have a program that really helps people. I am excited now to allow Mike to introduce himself and for us to go ahead and get started.
All right. Thanks, Amory. That was great. I'm Mike Davila. It's great to be with you. I started on my road to higher education. I did my undergraduate at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis. Went out to sea afterwards. I served as a surface warfare officer on a guided missile cruiser and an aircraft carrier. Went back to the Naval Academy and taught there for a few years as my final tour of duty. After that, I got recruited by Merrill Lynch. So I really started to delve into the world of finance. So you'll probably hear some of that finance stuff popping out throughout the presentation tonight. But in 2003, I left that endeavor and went into the higher education consulting realm and got a master's of higher educational administration from UT Austin, brought it about 2013 or so. So anyway, Amory talked about the company already, so we'll just dive in to what are we going to talk about tonight. And today's overview is really all about how to get into a hyper-selective school. What are they looking at? How does the admissions process work? How do we begin this process with introspection? How do the different factors shape our perception of ourselves through the process as we go through the read process of these colleges? So I think it's really important to kind of look at the bigger picture first and then kind of get down into the nitty and the gritty. So let's start with some big picture stuff. Why even apply to these hyper selective schools? There's a ton of reasons to do this. Often clients that I talk to say, hey, the quality of education is super amazing. This is what we're looking for our students. Their faculty there is amazing. They're the rock stars of the field. Resources, their facilities, their prospects for jobs after graduation. I had the opportunity to speak with a lady who's in Harvard grad, both for undergrad and her law degree. But she said after she came out of her undergrad, she had six-figure job salaries that were strong, six-figure job offers given to her coming out of that particular institution. So yeah, job prospects are a big reason why I think a lot of people look there. Absolutely superior networking, higher earnings potentials, having peers that are also aligned with these high trajectory career goals, things like that. Also having a lot of cultural experiences. You'll find that the Ivy Leagues, the upper tier ones, the near Ivies, public Ivies tend to be really culturally diverse. So there's that allure. Lots of growth opportunities. Sometimes people look at these schools also for their financial aid policies, because if you're person of need, you might have the entire thing paid for. So that's an attractant, I think, for a lot of folks. Also, having the prestige, the social capital. I remember when I was in high school, I grew up in Clear Lake, outside of Houston, near NASA, and just about everybody went to some really good schools coming out of that high school. So prestige was something, at least as a 17-year-old, I think I was really looking for. So it begs the question, hey, what actually is a hyper selective school? When you go to some admissions events, it's often that, you feel like, wow, this school is hyper competitive. And in fact, they may not be. So here's a couple of thoughts for you. The main idea is that no single student has a really good chance of gaining admission, period, end of story. I often look at some numbers, and when I see a selectivity below 20%, Yep, that's a hyper competitive school. And we'll talk about how those percentages have changed over time here in a little bit on a different slide. But yeah, below 20% is a pretty good rule of thumb. In a place where, the grades, hey, I could have a 4.0, I could have a perfect SAT score, ACT score, et cetera, et cetera. All of these great things by themselves don't necessarily even guarantee us getting into the school itself. Sometimes I hear people say, well, hey, my student goes to fill in the name of the blank, nationally ranked public high school or highly thought of private education. Isn't that going to help? Well, it might, but it's just one of the many, many factors at these super hyper competitive schools. It's not going to necessarily get us in. The other thing I would note is that there are a lot of times I hear parents and students especially say, hey, I don't get it. I have a 4.0 GPA. This other student with a 3.9 got into this hyper competitive school, but I didn't. What happened? So those comparisons, guys, are not helpful at all. But why? Because we don't know all the factors. We don't know that other student's essay. We don't understand how they connected to the admissions folks. We just don't. Okay. So I always caution people, hey, we're in like our little lane as we apply to college. We can't really compare ourselves to others. So, what are some examples of these types of schools? I'm going to give you a quick list of the sub 5% admittance rate schools. These are the most selective schools in the United States today: Caltech, Columbia, Harvard, MIT, Princeton, Stanford, U Chicago, and Yale. Notice that only half of the Ivy League is here. All these other schools like MIT, they're not Ivy League. Although we always think, oh, the Ivies are the very most selective, and that's not necessarily the case. If we bump up in terms of selectivity a little bit higher, a little bit easier to get into, we're looking at 5 to 10% admit rates. There are about 22 schools on that list, and I'll let you examine this. Here, you're going to see mainly private institutions on this list. But yeah, all these are going to be pretty darned well-known schools, except for places like Curtis, for example. That's a music conservatory in Philadelphia. But many of these others are household names. And if we go up one more level between 10 and 20%, there are 45 of those schools, by the way. And again, now we're starting to see public institutions. We see service academies here. We have a lot of different private institutions. And again, there are some surprises on here, like College of the Ozarks. That is a work college, but very, very difficult to get into, and also a really, really fantastic place if you don't have a lot of money to pay for school. So lots of choices here, and they're all very, very difficult to get into. So we'll be talking about some of the factors that will help us gain acceptance into some of these schools. But I'm going to also say that numbers sometimes fib, or at least don't tell the entire story. There are other schools too that are hyper competitive that just don't necessarily seem that way if you look online. For example, UT Austin, right in our backyard. If you went online today, you would see that they have an overall acceptance rate of 29%. But some majors like computational engineering, yep, it's 10%. So it's far, far, far more competitive in many of their majors. University of Michigan, another public Ivy, their acceptance rate's only 17%, and their business school only has a 9% acceptance rate, so less than half of their overall acceptance rate.
Hey, Mike,
Later,
in
yeah,
in terms of UT, do you think the acceptance rate is going to be a lot lower after this particular season?
absolutely. We went from like 70 something thousand applications to 90 plus thousand applications for about the same level of acceptance or number
Yeah,
of
about
seats, I should say.
9,000. Yeah, about
Yeah,
9,000 seats.
exactly. So, and we'll talk about some of the reasons for that just overall. But COVID and the after effects of that with test optional, et cetera, really started to make acceptance rates go way, way, way down. Okay. So, as we start to think about these highly competitive schools, I would ask myself some questions if I was a student today. Okay, so if you got a camera handy, you probably want to take a quick snapshot of this screen. The first, where have I taken initiative in my education, in my community, and How will I continue to do that in college? That is an element that many super selective schools really like to see. This initiative, starting projects, starting nonprofits, doing really strong community advocacy type of work. And what is my community, by the way? How do I value it? How have I actually impacted this group of scholars I'm with, or this summer camp that I've been a part of, or whatever it may be? But all of us have a community somewhere that we have been in part of and have served. Okay. Where have I taken risks? Where have I gone outside of what was presented to me initially to learn more? Where have I tried something, even if I risked failure or failed? What did I learn from that? Even if it was just simply resilience. How have I demonstrated excellence? How have I gone for that brass ring and gotten it? How have I collaborated with others? How have I explored creativity? How do I find balance in my life? That's kind of an odd one, right? Because the other ones seem like pretty much in step with what you would expect an Ivy League or upper tier one school to be looking for. But yep, they want to make sure that you're going to go there and be balanced and contribute in other ways and stay there. It's important. What excites you intellectually and extracurricularly? Those are experiences that you've gotten outside of the normal high school kinds of environments. So that's really important to have. And what will you do with the skills and experiences once you get to college? And then last and not least, by a long shot, I highlighted this one for a reason. Most of the students that we've worked with who've gone on to these really hyper competitive schools have a really pretty darn clear goal in mind beyond college. And that school experience is going to connect with that larger goal, that the student can actually talk about that. Hey, I really want to do this with my life. And going to Dartmouth is going to be able to enable that to happen for me because of this, and this. Really important to have that long-term vision. That one we need to talk about. We need to develop over time if we're looking for those types of schools. And oftentimes I don't see it initially when we start talking with students in a sophomore year or junior year. Heck, there are parents I've talked to who are like, yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out for myself. So anyway, know thyself, know thy enemy, in 100 battles you will not know defeat. That's Sun Tzu, same kind of strategy here. So a little bit of humor. These are quotes that I just dug up. Ivy League schools are blah 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 blah. Got them all. While these schools are highly selective, you can significantly improve your chances of acceptance with a perfect college application. That's the part I laugh about because guess what, gang? There is no perfect college application out there. And if you try to make one like with ChatGPT or something like that, it's probably not going to be the greatest reflection of us. We're all imperfect humans. Of course, even in the face of a robust scholarship from a lackluster school, by the way, which one is that? Middle income students should absolutely attend the best school they get into. Nothing beats the lifelong benefits of making it through the Ivy Gates. Okay, that's an Ivy Consulting Service website. Okay, hold on a second. This is where I put my finance hat on. Say, yeah, Ivy League's great. Upper tier one, fantastic. What about the finance though? Am I really able and wanting to shell out $90,000 if I'm a middle or upper middle income family that doesn't have millions and millions of dollars? We need to ask ourselves those kinds of real important questions because guess what? The Ivy Leagues, upper tier ones typically do not give merit aid. So it's important to look before we lead. Okay. So we need to understand the environment around us and what's been going on in the last couple of years. And of course, now things are getting even crazier. But the Common App, a couple of things there. The Common App really blew up. Like before the pandemic, there were 841 schools that were on Common App. Now there's over 1,000. So a lot of schools are using the Common App, and that means that more students can apply to a whole lot more schools all at once. And so what that means is that the colleges sometimes are swimming in applicants, just literally swimming. Well, I shouldn't say in applicants, but in applications. That's an important distinction. The rankings, those have always, well, not always been there, but since like the late 70s, early 80s, the rankings have driven competition amongst these schools. And that can't be dismissed because colleges really want to stay top of mind, top of the pile worldwide. Okay. Escalation of early decision. Most of us know what early decision is. It's a binding contract. If you sign it, that means, guess what? I'm going. Pretty much irrespective of anything other than inability to pay. So lots more schools are doing early decision, and now we have early action one, early action two, which are two different deadlines, allowing you to do early decision in two different rounds to do two different schools. You have a single choice early action. You've got all sorts of different types of application plans now. And what you're going to find is that some schools, guess what? Their early decision application percentage is really high. Their acceptance rates coming out of ED are extremely high compared to regular decision. Like Tulane, if we apply regular decision, it's probably going to be a 1 or 2% acceptance rate, So we just have to be aware of that. If we want to go to one of these super uber elite schools, we need to check the stats and see, do I really benefit myself by doing an early decision application? And we have to be really clear on that, because guess what? You can only do one of those. Okay. The end of affirmative action definitely is challenged, I think, some of these upper tier schools, but guess what? They're still finding a way to get diversity in their classroom, which is what they really, really want. Financial aid system issues, don't need to talk about that one. You guys, literally saw that on the news, not this last cycle, but the one before. The rollout was just completely botched. The last bullet point talks about the death of the U.S. Department of Education. That's being batted around right now. Not going to go into that because we don't know what's really down the road for that. But if it does end up closing, they're talking about moving away from federal funding of loans to private lending, especially for things like PLUS loans that might make Ivy League education kind of unaffordable for middle income folks who might need those gap filler PLUS loans in order to get in. Okay. So, but the COVID-19, that was a huge turning point because most colleges were test optional during that period. Now, some of them are starting to return back to requiring tests. Things like UT or schools like UT Austin have done that this past cycle. So we really need to know that that turned the spigot on, like really extremely 28 to 34% more applications at the most selective schools. So they're getting record number of applications on top of what they were already getting before. So here's a picture. If you're like me, I'm a very graphic person. I need to see graphs in order to comprehend some things. So this takes a snapshot of just some of the uber selective schools, kind of where they were back at the turn of the century and now where they are 20 years later. And you can see it's dramatic to see that. I mean, I have parents who are like, yeah, I got into XYZ school, but there's no way I could get in there now. And I've kind of feel the same way about my own alma mater.
Look at MIT. Wow, that's a pretty significant drop for MIT in
Absolutely.
2020. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. It's a lot.
That is very extreme. So, and this graph shows again the selectivity going up, the admissions rates going down, and you can see some schools like Boston University. It seems like all of the schools in Boston, for the most part, have really taken a nosedive in terms of acceptance rates. There's some surprises here, like Northwestern, just in 2005 had a 55, or I'm sorry, yeah, a 35% acceptance rate. Now they're down to 7, so that's definitely in the Ivy League range in terms of acceptance rates. So yeah, it's real, folks. We need to be balanced in our list. We need to understand that if we shoot the moon for all these different schools, just kind of hoping to throw a cast net out there and get into one, that may be a heartbreak situation in the making for a lot of these schools. Okay. Then you can see the school variance and the SAT variance across different types of selectivity. For tonight's purposes, we are really pretty much over on the origin of the x-axis over to the left. So you can see the most selective schools, the median SATs are going to be 1,500. So if we're not, producing those types of scores, yeah, can we go test optional? Yeah, we sure can do that. But we have to know that a lot of the students that get into these uber selective schools are presenting test scores. So I've got some stats on that here in a minute. Okay. So perfect ACT scores, for example, the Ivy Plus schools, which include schools like Duke and MIT and U Chicago, Stanford, they're not Ivy, but they're pretty close to it. Back in 2002, they had 175,000 applications received, and only 134 perfect ACT scores. Well, you can see the data in 2022 that ballooned to almost 600,000 apps with almost, 2,500 perfect ACT scores, representing a almost 1,800% increase in perfect scores. So that just shows you that there's a lot of people out there walking around with these extreme credentials, and we need to know that's our competition. I often have families that are like, yeah, my kid's salutatorian, valedictorian. Guess what, gang? There are like 28, 29,000 public high schools out there. So there are a lot of salutatorians and valedictorians as well. Okay. So to release or not to release these SAT scores, that this is kind of what I was alluding to just a second ago. So you can look here, Carnegie Mellon University, very selective school. What about 84%, 74%, I'm sorry, submitted ACT scores. So that significant chunk of their applicant pool that were accepted actually submitting scores. Cornell, maybe a little less. Harvard, about the same, 74% or so submitting ACT, SAT scores. And then Northwestern, same kind of numbers here. So I just wanted to give you a little taste of what it's like in terms of looking overall at having SAT, ACT scores being submitted or not, even in a test optional environment. So there are a couple different options here. There are some schools that are test blind, like the University of California schools. They don't accept test scores, period. There are test optional schools, I should say. And all you have to do is go to fairtest.org and you can pull up the entire list of schools that are test optional. So if SAT taking is not our thing, which it was never mine either, we can go there and find some really good options. There's test flexible, which is a brand new term that Yale, I think, coined this past cycle, where they said, yeah, you have to give us something. It can be an SAT, an ACT, an IB, or an AP score. And then there's a small list of about 15 schools that require SATs or ACTs. That's MIT, UT, Harvard, all those guys, plus the entirety of the Georgia state system, the Florida state system, and a couple of others as well. So just know that that's out there.
Hey, Mike, we had a good question come in about early decision. I'm sorry I was a little late on that since
Sure.
that was a slide or two ago. But the question was, does early decision option reduce the possibilities to obtain financial help or scholarships?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I think it used to be generally known that if you did an early decision application, it would materially affect your need-based financial aid. And I think for a long time that was true. My perception of that in the last, say, 5 to 10 years has started really to change because I have seen students get accepted early decision and still get some pretty decent funding. Now, word to the wise, really check on not the need-based aid stuff ahead of time, but look at the merit-based aid potential at the various schools that you're looking at. You could do net price calculators in order to do that. The reason I say that is because there are some schools that give massive amounts of merit aid and are really good schools. Like, for example, Tulane is one of them. Other schools like Duke or Harvard, they don't give a dime of merit-based aid or scholarships. Okay, so it's important to know that if we're going to some of these schools that are 100% need met schools that have a no merit-based aid policy, if we gain acceptance, we might be paying full freight if we're in that middle income zone. And that's a real troublesome point, I know, but it's important to know that up front. All right, perfect. So let's turn the tables here a minute. These are in order. These are the things that colleges, when responding to a survey through the Independent Educational Consultants of America, they responded saying, hey, these are the most important things we look at in order. So the rigor in our curriculum, that is number one. We have to really pay attention to that. The other day, I was working with a student who was picking her senior year classes, and she's like, hey, is it cool if I end up with 2 off periods? And I was like, well, that's a really good question. What types of schools do you really want to go to? If you're trying to get into the uber selective schools, that might put us in a bad light, really, because they are going to see gaps in your curriculum in the senior year. They will find that out on the Common App as you apply in the summer between junior and senior year. Okay. So other schools will do things like calculate percentages of, hey, how many APs did you take versus how many are offered at your high school? Things like that give them an indication of how deeply did you engage what was offered you, okay, at your high school. Now, if you go to a high school that has two AP courses offered, no worries, they're not going to penalize you because of that, okay? The GPA in the core courses specifically, a lot of people get really bent out of shape when they find out band, that track, all of these non-academic kinds of courses are stripped away in a recalculation of GPA on the college's side of the house. That happens all the time. So just know that colleges are going to do some really interesting stuff to our transcript data once they receive it. Okay. SAT and ACT consistent with the GPA. So if we have a 4.0, but we have a 1220 SAT, that may be, kind of like, okay, what happened here? Maybe it was a bad day. But if we have a 2.9 and a 1550, they're also going to look at that askance. So just know that we want some consistent moons in alignment, is what I call it. Okay. We want passionate involvement in a few activities, which is kind of opposite of what we probably heard parents many moons ago about being well-rounded. That's not really the case here. They want some serious involvement and depth in a few areas. Okay. Well-written essays. To me, that should probably get promoted up that list because a lot of students will wait until the last minute to write these darn things, and that is rough because they really need to be paid attention to in this process. Why? Because what screens us in and out at the top of the funnel of the admissions processes of most of these schools are data. And really, what makes or breaks our admissions chances are what's at the bottom of the funnel, which have to do with character traits and all these other things. So, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Leadership, initiative, diversity, strong recommendation letters, talent. My Emery likes to say, sports will take you places that academics never will, and that may have a real a place here, especially in the Ivy and the upper tier one schools. Okay, intellectual curiosity, evidences of character, finally demonstrated interest. But I would say at the upper tier of schools, demonstration of interest means nothing to them. They don't care. Truly. I went to Stanford once and said, hey, do you guys do strategic enrollment management where you do all this data mining of interest? And they're like, yeah, we could care less. And that's true of most of those schools. Okay, transcripts, just, it's beyond just the grades. Like being in the top 1 to 5% of high school graduating class is pretty much the norm for most of these schools. But know that not all A's are not the same. Like, for example, if I do an AP environmental science versus an AP BC level calculus class, those are definitely not going to be looked at as the same type of rigor, to those types of schools. AP, IB, and dual credit courses, yeah, definitely. I get a lot of questions about, hey, should I do a dual credit course or should I go for the AP, especially when I'm looking at these types of schools. I can say, well, gang, think about it. In Austin, we have Austin Community College, which I love, but doing a dual credit course through them, Emory may not know really what ACC offers, but they will certainly know what IB or AP can do for them. So be thinking about that as you select courses, especially in the sophomore and junior years. The grade trends for most of the students attending these schools are consistently high. It's not sometimes it can be an upward trajectory, but for the most part, students that go there have done well through their high school time, and their high school track records at the school have been really good as well. And sometimes colleges will compare your transcript and your GPA versus 2 or 3 students who came from your high school last year or the year before that they admitted, hey, how are those students doing in our freshman and sophomore year classes? What were their grade point averages like, as a senior in high school? So there's a lot though, like the last little line, what can't I tell about a student from just their transcript, GPA, or test scores? There's a lot out there, a lot of the human factors. So before we jump into those, think of this as a funnel. Okay. Like we said before, generally the grades, the transcripts, all the things that can be quantified, that's the top of their funnel. Okay. So they can screen a whole bunch of people out based on, hey, that person's got a 3.2 GPA. Yeah, they have a nice high school. Yes, they did well, but they're not going to be competitive here. So they thin the herd. Then next is a super important factor. It's what the institution needs, not what we need as a consumer, but what the college needs. So this could be, hey, I need an oboe player. Hey, I need a goalie. Hey, I need a fill in the blank. And believe you me, the pressures on the VP and the director of admissions are immense when it comes to that. Especially as a college starts building programs and things like that. And then the final cut tends to revolve around soft factors, the human factors that the student brings to the equation. Okay,
Hey, Mike, before we move on, we have another question that came in. Should
perfect.
my child take a dual credit class if there are no AP or IB courses offered?
And that's a great idea. And I would say absolutely yes, especially for trying to get into this level of college.
I agree 100%.
Yep, great one. Okie doke. All right. So let me move on to the next one. The resume and activities list. I have parents who are like, resume? Really? We need a resume for college? I thought that was for a job. And it's funny because sometimes the parents will try to jump into the student's academic resume and make it a job resume. No, do not do this. Academic resumes and job resumes are completely different. Okay. What we want to show on an academic resume is depth of involvement, okay, through an arc of time, okay, initiative, leadership, service to the community, like a lot of the stuff we just talked about on a different slide. How I've grown through time, shown resilience, focus, vision, getting quantifiable results. I have a lot of students who are like, yeah, I served on a committee. We raised, XYZ, $12,000 for this cause. I'm like, oh, that's great. Hey, why did you put that on your resume? Oh, I forgot to do that. So quantifiable results, gang, let's put it in there. And then significant achievements. Yeah, I'm a level 10 gymnast. I won state, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but spend some time on this, gang. It's okay if the resume turns out to be 2 or 3 pages long. Okay. I like to bullet point this. It does not have to be, super wordy, but it really should show some of these traits here: initiative, leadership, etc. Now, word of the wise, the Common App gives you a whopping 10 slots. That's it to show all of this kind of stuff. And I know students these days more than ever are super involved. So you have to be choosy in terms of the Common App, but for the resume, you can list anything you like and everything you like. So I promised to talk about some of these human factors, the traits that are necessary for success at the very bottom of the funnel. So I want you to just, again, take a look at this, maybe take a snapshot of it. Open-mindedness, compassion, fit for the institutional culture, a dedication to a cause, collaboration, leadership, curiosity, risk-taking. All these things mean something to these colleges, and we want to be able to demonstrate that we're not just a book-focused person who's going to go to the library and study all day long. That's not what they're looking for. Essays. This is another place where we can shine. This is another place where we can show them our true colors, so to speak. So, one thing I would say about the core essay, this is the main essay in the Common App or the Coalition app or however we're applying. This is a personal narrative. When I say that, students are like, huh? What's that mean? Because they don't do this in high school. Truly, they don't. They do a lot of writing that has to do with comparisons, expository, research-based things. This is about themselves. So they are experts on themselves. Okay. They're going to write this in first person. Guess how long this is? 650 words is about a page. That's it, gang. We're not writing War and Peace here. So we have to be, again, really choosy because a lot of students have a lot to say about what's going on for them, and they have to fit it all in 650 words, one page. So here's a good example. Some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. That's essay prompt number 1 of 7 essays that can be written on the Common App. Number 7 is a catch-all. The student can write anything they want in a page. So discuss an accomplishment. This is one of my favorites. Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of growth and a new understanding of others. That one is fantastic for a lot of students. Then we're going to have to write some supplemental essays. And here's a reason why not to apply to like 22 super hyper competitive schools, because There are going to be some schools like Yale that have 9 supplements. So not all are going to be that way, but if we have 2 or 3 times 22, you get the picture. You're writing tons of essays. Now, there's lots of overlap, of course, but let me tell you, if someone's doing that level of application volume, they're going to have probably maybe 75 to 100 revisions going on. So just know that that's going to be really time intensive. So we've always told students, hey, 8 to 10 schools is probably a pretty good rule of thumb. So
So,
you can
Mike,
read.
what do you think the most amount of essays one of our kids had to write?
Oh yeah, we had a student a couple years ago that applied to 24 schools and had over 100 essays. So that was a lot, and it's just a lot of stress on the student. So I think we need to focus, because most students don't have that kind of time.
Right.
So I've listed a few essays up here in the interest of time. I know that you can get those through those faster than I can actually read them to you. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. Okay, quote from the inside. I'll let you read this as well. Pause here for a moment. So if you come off as just another math genius with no personality, it's not going to go well for you. It's going to be tough. Okay, another thing I told students repeatedly, do not let ChatGPT, Bard, any of these large language model AI things write your essay. Don't even let it close to this. This is personal. You want it to be from a human, okay? For sure. Okay, special influencing factors that can sometimes, push the needle in our favor or not. So institutional priorities, I can't bang the desk enough on that. That's the reason why people are like, oh my gosh, I couldn't get in over here, but I got in over here. It just doesn't make any sense. Well, majors, gender, geography, talent, all of those things play into the institution's need. Athletic talent, Emery kind of talked about this before, athletics will take you in a place where, academics may not. Yeah, if you're a fencer, guess what? There's only a handful of schools that have fencing. Okay. If you're great at that, man, that could really help you get in. Same thing with lacrosse, squash, polo, places, that have that kind of good stuff. Significant obstacles being overcome for sure. I'm starting to ask questions of this sort of magnitude for a lot of the students I'm working with this year. Faculty and staff progeny, yep, they get benefits. Diversity, yes. Feeder schools, yeah, I went to Exeter Prep. Yep, that could certainly help. The legacy thing is kind of under fire right now at a lot of institutions. And then, yeah, development admits. Yeah, we can write, huge checks for, libraries and different things like that, for sure. This stuff has been around for a long time. So, in a general understanding of the admissions process at these places, holistic admissions, okay, you probably got that picture already. The numbers have to be there. And for most of the people who end up in the bottom, they all generally have really high GPAs and SAT scores and all that kind of stuff. They are going to be reviewed many times through various processes in admissions. There are some institutions that will have a faculty reader who reads, they'll have an admission staff member that reads, they compare notes, they vote, 2 thumbs up. Okay, students getting in. This, a thumb up, thumb down, we're going to committee. And then it gets debated amongst a committee. Okay. A lot of schools behind the scenes will have something called academic merit or academic index, where all the things that we did according to their grading scale get points. Okay, so that's pretty common. And you just know that there's a lot of complicated decisions. Not every admissions officer I've talked to said, yeah, I've gotten everyone in that I wanted to get in. Most of them lament that many of the great students they really wanted to have come to campus did not get in, just because of whatever. Artificial intelligence and admissions. I'm just going to summarize this for you. 70% of this surveyed group said that they were using artificial intelligence to read the teacher recommendations and the transcripts. Well, guess what? Transcripts make all the world of difference. That's going to free up a lot of money and time for them. That makes lots of sense. But 60% of them said that they read the students' essays using AI. So to me, that's really interesting. They all came back saying, hey, we have final reviews done by humans, et cetera, et cetera. But this is the wave of the future. This is already happening in admissions offices that are not even selective or not so selective. So just know that it's all going on behind the scenes. And yeah, again, this is a quote. I'll let you read this really quickly. You hear a lot of people saying, hey, what makes you stand out? That's that highlighted part, that extra something. The part that stands out to me is it's a zero-sum game. They have only so many seats that they can fill, and all these competing interests trying to vie for their candidates or their priorities. Okay, so we're finally here to the part of the presentation that's talking about some case studies. Okay, first off, the the best thing to have done would be to lay out everything that a student has, all their essays, all their transcripts, all of the teacher recommendations, everything, so that you could see it all. But we just can't do that. It's just too cumbersome to do in a webinar type of format. So we're just going to focus on a few factors based on a few previous students that will talk about things like the importance of the transcript or some surprises with the transcript, the essay, the importance of that, and kind of show you a really high quality essay. The resume, what does that look like? And then, this lesson of lumpiness that I want all of us to take with us tonight when we leave. Okay. So the first student we're going to talk about is Erin. She's a 2021 grad, so a few years ago. She had a 3.82 GPA unweighted. Her SAT was a 1500, so really pretty stout numbers there. She was a top 6% student in her class. She had 8 AP courses, including 5 in her junior year. So she was really kicking it her junior year. But she had some B's, okay? She wanted to major in biochemistry, okay? So that was, kind of a high level picture of what she was wanting to do. Okay, so her transcript, we'll take a look at that. Got 8 APs, a solid trend, top 6%, a few Bs. Let me try to pull up her actual transcript for you. Here, stand by just a minute for me. Okay. Okay, so let me share. Um, it's funny. We just transitioned away from using Zoom to Google Meets, and it's a completely different system. So I apologize. Let me see if I can just stop this share and start another share here real quick for you. And
We are adaptable human beings.
yeah, that's what we'd like to tell ourselves, right? So let me share screen one, get all this out of here. Okay, yeah, here we go. So,
Yeah.
Emery, am I showing a transcript?
Yes, I can see a
Okay,
transcript.
yay. Okay, so we figured it out. Okay, so I don't need you guys to analyze this, but the highlighted areas are all the APs, okay? The circled areas here were some Bs for cumulative averages. What was really crazy when looking at this, she wanted to be a biochem major, right? And when we look in the science area, chemistry and bio were taken on level, okay? She did great in them, but they were on level, okay? So just keep that in mind here. So let me go back. Let me stop sharing that, and I will share the other screen. Okay. So, okay. So, all that kind of good stuff. She got admitted to Brown, okay, based on that. Now, what couldn't you see? Her essays, her teacher recommendations, all those other things. But it just goes to show you didn't have to necessarily shoot the lights out in every AP related to your major, okay, in order to get into a really super hyper competitive school. Okay. Steven, 2022 grad, 4.0 GPA, had tons of APs, high AP exam results as well. Was going to major in humanities and then wanted to go to law school afterwards. He had a 1550 SAT score, had lots and lots of community service, including a lot of band involvement and winning of competitions and things like that. He was a 22 grad. We'll come back to his essay here in a second. And what I want you to take away from this essay is it's super well written, it's organized. He's got a hook, there's a great conclusion, there's some interesting devices within that. And let me now share that with you. Okay, so get out of this and come over here to this. Now, we're not going to read this whole thing, but a couple things that I was going to show you is like, hey, this is a fragment, gang. Rules of English sometimes don't apply in college essays. By the way, there are paragraphs here. I know that sounds basic, but I was talking to an essay reviewer the other day, and they're like, yeah, a lot of students just submit a big block of text. No, we need to have organization and thought processes and stuff. There's emotion here, okay? Um, Started to look at proactively for ways to help, okay? I started a charity. I designed the charity to be run by teens, creating a bridge between the foster community and teen volunteers to promote social entrepreneurship. Ended up supporting thousands of foster children. He trained certified as a pet therapy team with Bow Wow therapy dogs. Also spearheaded their efforts to obtain publisher and author permissions, etc. So basically, nearly everything I got deeply involved with, from gear for kids to pet therapy to key club president, revolved around children's advocacy. So again, you don't have to read the whole essay to see, wow, this is really well constructed, and it's really talking about being socially engaged in the community. So that was interesting and helpful. Okay, so let me go back to our PowerPoint. All right, stand by. Okay, so what we saw here, evidences of emotional vulnerability, self-reflection, taking initiative, building community, giving credit where credit was due, some hints about substantial results, a desire to bring his advocacy forward into his post-college life. Got admitted to Duke. Okay. All right, next one, Cheryl, 2023 grad, 4.0 GPA, SAT of 1530, was wanting to major in computer science. She started high school at a very large competitive high school and then homeschool for the final 2 years and traveled. So I used to think, oh my gosh, homeschool, that's an even harder jump into an upper tier school because you have no track record. Mom is writing the teacher recommendation. It's wow, that is a huge feat to try to do. Okay, her resume, I'm going to say again, showed evidence of leadership, initiative, results, creativity, hints about ability to work with students from all over the world. And let me, one last time, share my screen. Oh, get out of ChatGPT. Okay, and we'll go to Cheryl's resume. So here's an example of a student's resume. Gives you the education, kind of a summary of what the transcript would look like, some career goals. Then we jump into computer science experience right away. Okay, internships, founder and creator, founder and creator, founder and creator, extracurricular activities, YouTube channel, language. That was great. Authored a book, had some significant achievements in DECA, and then had all these languages, including regular normal languages, not just computer languages, et cetera, et cetera. So a really neat resume, not just one page long. Okay, and let me share again, screen 2. All right, sorry, I had to do a bunch of juggling there. Okay, so for her, it was definitely not a linear path. She got denied at all these schools, which was rough, right? She worked really hard to do all these darned essays and applications. She got whitelisted at Harvard, UCLA, and Carnegie Mellon, which was nice, but never got pulled off the wait list. She ended up getting accepted at UT, University of Texas, Austin, Texas A&M, and Cornell. So it's interesting that a school like Carnegie Mellon would waitlist us, or just flat out denied at UC Santa Barbara, but would get into an Ivy League school. So I want us to take that away from tonight. You can be an outstanding student and get rejected at some schools and get accepted for a completely different reason someplace else. Okay. It doesn't make sense. And this happens all the time, gang. Okay. So some traits that I want us to think about and pull out of ourselves as we, roll through the application process. The basics have to be covered. The SAT, the transcript, all those things are pretty much close to perfect. There's a lots of achievements, sometimes at state, national, or world level, but most of these students really want to help society and do some meaningful thing in their life. Intellectual curiosity kind of shows up in various things, including like reading a lot, things of that nature, taking initiative in a lot of their leadership roles. If you're a talented athlete, yeah, that's great. That might help. I've always found that when I talk to students who are heading to these types of institution, I'm 52 years old and it kind of feels like I'm talking with a peer. That's, maybe not that's a bit of a stretch, but it is really close. It's really interesting. They have emotional intelligence, they have drive and passion. And then there's that personality factor that was kind of mentioned before. Are they likable? Would they be great citizens of a hyper-competitive schools community? Okay, so questions to ask yourself, before applying. Okay, is this hyper selective college really where I want to be? Is it got things that I really need and want, especially downrange? Do I have the basic stats or traits to gain acceptance? My purpose here isn't to dissuade people. It's, hey, look in the mirror. Do I see the type of student that's getting into these colleges? Okay. Does my college list have balance? Please make sure it has balance, including financial balance. Okay. If I'm not going to receive need-based aid, can I afford the full price Ivy or upper tier one pricing? If I need to do it, can I do a gap year in order to gain maturity or perspective or to build my resume some? Do I also have the stamina to write 25 to 40 essays for multiple schools in that realm? And would I really be willing to do early decision or single choice early action to a single college? Those are some important things to ask before pulling the trigger on a bunch of these types of schools. Okay, some encouragement here. Number one, thanks for attending. I hope you gained some insights and some nuggets of wisdom through the talk tonight. My dad was a golf coach. He's always told me we still play golf together. Never up, never in. Okay. If you don't hit the ball hard enough on the green, it ain't never going in the hole. Okay. Period. End of story. So if you want to apply to Cornell and Princeton, definitely apply there. Okay. You'll never know until you do it. Okay. Make sure you have balance in that college list, broaden your views on the college list. I have a lot of people who come in with kind of narrow minds on that. Manage your own expectations, consider all the possibilities, definitely learn, research, visit, grow, okay, during this process. Don't forget the finance picture. Mom, dad, you guys are the kings and queens of that. So make sure that you guys have discussions around that with your student. Okay. And then again, if you're a student, set aside some significant time for things like the essay process in the hyper competitive realm. Okay. I'm going to pause there. Any questions?
Yes, we have some questions that came in. Okay. The first one is we've heard a lot about diversity tonight, and sometimes sounds as though it's being used in the context of race, religion, etc.
Mhm.
Is this the wrong impression because it's now illegal to consider these characteristics, right?
Well, it might be illegal to ask those questions on the admissions packet for sure. You're right, but do the colleges really want those things as part of their culture? Yes, they do. That has not changed, whether or not the Supreme Court or struck down affirmative action or not. Yeah, that is definitely still something that colleges really value. They want to make sure that people from all walks of life, different voices, different colors of skin, different upbringings get access to that level of education. That, my friends, that is not going to change based on a Supreme Court challenge.
And sometimes we have geographic diversity as well. I mean, so there's lots of different ways that you can look at that. And, a lot of schools like UT Austin has put a community question in for their supplementals. And so a lot of times you can talk about your community, your upbringing, your background in different ways as well to allow the university still to know, the uniqueness of your background. Okay. Another question that came in, if grants are taken away, I'm curious if that will potentially impact public or private schools more since faculty are often grant funded,
Oh yeah.
especially at research institutions. Do you know if there's a place where we can see how many faculty are grant funded?
That is a great question. I don't know that in terms of like our clearinghouse of, researchers on staff at various schools. I've never seen that. But yeah, what's happening right now in terms of the rollback of national funding for the NIH and all these different places, that's going to have a trickle down effect for sure. And I think there are a lot of people in administrations of colleges right now that are very, very, very concerned about how that's going to affect their funding, keeping their faculty, all that kind of good stuff. Unfortunately, we're way too early to see what those net effects are going to be.
Yeah, yeah, time will tell. The last question that's come in so far is, are AP exam scores part of the application process? I can tell you that on the Common App, there is a place on the Common App for the students to report the AP classes they've taken, as well as their AP test scores, and then allow the university to know the AP tests that they have upcoming as well. So there is an opportunity to talk about how amazing your kids are doing in APs. Another question that came in is, does UT Austin look at senior course enrollment to determine course rigor?
Senior course and yeah, okay. So in other words, are they looking at our senior course scheduling?
Yeah, what
Absolutely.
we're taking.
For sure. Every college out there that's in that realm is absolutely going to get a chance to see what's happening in the senior year, even though you won't be reporting grades. Um, but I tell students all the time, it's like, gang, senior year is super important. I know that you might have had a really rough junior year with 5 APs, but senior year is the year that is literally a launching pad into your freshman year of college. For example, my senior year I took trigonometry. I didn't take calculus. Then I had to sit around 3 levels of calculus and compete in the classroom against people who'd been to college already and taken calculus. So I tell people, listen, you have an opportunity now to really study and maybe place out of some basic freshman level classes, or if they require you to take them, great, you're going to do really, really well. So, yeah, senior year does matter, and they will find out which classes you've taken. And by the way, they will collect final transcripts from senior year. So, every
Yeah.
once in a while, we'll have a student who's like, yeah, I failed 3 classes senior year. What do I do? Well, guess what? You might want to communicate that to the college and let them know that, hey, I've had some things happen and here's why. So anyway, hopefully
Yeah, and
that
on the
answers.
Common App, the students do report all of the classes that they're taking as a senior, and if there are changes to that schedule, the universities need to know that as well because
Correct.
they are looking to see, that your students are still putting forth the full force and effort of high school, that we're not just kind of phoning it in last year and have a really bad case of senioritis, because sometimes they can yank any scholarships that they've offered if you do get D's or you fail classes, etc. So
And once in a while, you'll see a student that's invited not to come, you know.
yeah,
Uh, so that's a horror story that doesn't often happen, but it can.
yeah. Another question that just came in: what if you receive an award in extracurricular senior year? Will the colleges still see it?
They won't see that until you tell them. So
Yeah.
you'll probably need to be in contact with your admissions rep and say, "Hey, listen, I submitted my app 2 months ago, but I just received this nice award. It wasn't part of my application, but here it is." And yeah, that's the best thing to do.
I was going to say that's a really great reason to reach out to the admissions rep at the universities that your students are applying to, have the students do that. Hey, I just wanted to make you aware of a change that has happened since, I submitted my application. The next question is, you've mentioned the Common App. Are there other apps paid or free to compare? Is the Common App the most recognized? Yeah, I would say the Common App is the application that most students are going to use to apply for college. Mike mentioned earlier there's about 1,100 four-year universities in the United States and abroad that are on the Common App. We were doing backflips and jumping jacks and celebrating when UT and A&M went on the Common App a couple years ago, because the majority of our clients are only going to use the Common App to apply. Now, there are some schools like MIT, for example, that are not on the Common App. And so you have to go to that school's direct college website to be able to apply. There are some schools like Sam Houston State and Tarleton that are going to be on Apply Texas, which is only for schools here in Texas. There's other states that have their own kind of statewide application, but the majority of the kids that we work with are going to use only the Common App. I hope that answers that question. And I think that is the last question.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys letting us go a little bit over time. And yeah, let me hit the last slide here.
Thanks.
So I'll let you take that one away, Emery.
Perfect. All right. So tonight we talked a lot about what it takes to get into hyper selective universities. The journey to getting into these schools isn't just about grades or in test scores. We talked a lot about strategy planning, standing out in a competitive applicant pool. What's going to differentiate your student from every other kid that's applying? With the right guidance, your student can maximize their chances of acceptance into their dream schools. We know every student's path is unique, and we are here to help you navigate that path with confidence. That's why we're offering a free initial consultation to help assess your student's strengths, identify opportunities, and help create a personalized roadmap to success. We'll answer your burning questions about college, talk about your student and their plans for college, talk to you a little bit about the service that we offer. If this is something you're interested in, please hold your phone camera up to the QR code that you see right there on the screen. Fill out the form and we'll get you scheduled, or you can email Anna at collegeinroads.com directly to schedule. One thing I can promise you is that you will be a lot calmer about the whole process of getting into college after this call. So take the first step today and schedule your free consultation to give your student the competitive edge they deserve. Just by being here tonight, we are thrilled to offer you a couple of free gifts for being here. You're welcome to hit our website and download the 12 things high school students should do to increase chances of being accepted into a top college. It's a PDF. We do have pretty good monthly tips, if I do say so myself, in our newsletter that goes out monthly. Here are the 3 to 5 things that need to be accomplished every month per class, senior, junior, sophomore, etc. And then that free consultation. Certainly hope this information was helpful. We're so happy that you were here with us today. Any final questions? Actually, we did have a final question that just came in, Mike. Are universities informed of national merit scholars, or do students need to share that information?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually don't know that one right off the top of my head, Emery. Do you know that one?
I do. They have to share it. If you are a national merit semifinalist or finalist, the student is going to submit a list of schools. If you're commended, they want a list of the top 4 schools. You want a letter of commendation sent to on behalf of the National Merit Scholarship Organization. For semi and for finalists especially, you have to one school. You get to name one school. Um, but yes, the students do need to share that information. That can also be put on the Common App or on the college applications that the students submit as an honor. We would 100% encourage them to do that. But there's additional forms that need to be filled out through the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. I hope that answers that question. Can you share the free consultation link here? Yeah, let me see if I can find that. I know I have the QR code. Um, ooh, anonymous. I wish I could just email it to you. But if you'll just email Anna at collegeinroads.com, we can get that free consult set up for you.
Awesome. Well, gang, really appreciate you being here tonight, spending an hour with us. Hopefully you found it helpful. We always enjoy talking about this stuff, so it's great for us too. So again, I hope you have a fantastic evening, and we hope to catch up with you another day.
Thanks for coming, guys. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Take care.
Thanks.